Happy New Year! It's 2023. Let's talk about that. Welcome to Fusion. I'm your host, Brendan Saunders. Let's take a minute today to discuss the integration of faith and the new year. It is 2023. Before we get into that, would you please do the SNL? Subscribe, notify, like. Hit the subscribe button so that you are a subscriber to my channel. Notify, hit the notification button so that you will be notified every time I drop a video. And like this video, hit the thumbs up. I deeply appreciate it. Now, as I said, it's the new year. And I thought that I would talk about one of my, it's kind of a passage from the Bible that I go to. I always find myself circling back to, and it's Psalm 90. In Psalm 90, I'm not going to read through the whole psalm. In fact, I will sort of just give you the recap of it, which is that it's a recorded prayer that Moses prayed, preferably or understood to have been later in his life. Certainly when you consider the themes in it, that seems to make sense, because really in a lot of ways it's a lament. For those that don't know what a lament is, it's kind of an expression of grief or sorrow. In this one specifically, he's clearly pondering life. And so it isn't necessarily a psalm that I go to or send people to be perked up and encouraged. I will admit that on the front end. But it is a great psalm when you begin to ponder life, because that's really what he's doing in it. He's pondering life. And I would say that the themes that he comes up with and understands about life, I'll give you three things from it. Life is short, life is hard, and life at times can lack meaning. Well, that's it, right? Life is short, life is hard, and life can seemingly lack meaning at times. I think that a lot of us can certainly understand having times when we feel that way. We have times when life just throws us a curveball, and sometimes that goes day after day after day. So, throughout it, though, there's a couple of times when he makes some great requests of God. And I think that the greatest request that he makes is in the 12th verse of Psalm 90, where he says this: "Teach us to number our days so that we may gain a heart of wisdom." Teach us to number our days so that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Teach us to number our days. What a powerful thing to ask of God. God, would you teach us to number our days? Now, let's be clear about what that means. In other words, teach us to number our days. Help us to be fully aware of just how short our time here is. That would be another way to put it. Remember, I told you one of the major themes throughout this is how short life is. And so the person who reflects on life, who looks around, realizes those that they have lost in their life, realizes that at best we are given on average 70 years in life, realizes that we aren't guaranteed any of that, is the person who is starting that process of realizing how short life is, how precious life is, how meaningful the short time that we are on this earth ought to be. And that is why he asks God to help remind us of this, to make us a people who are reminded of this, so that, teach us to number our days, so that we will be motivated We will understand and be motivated to live wisely. We will understand why living with wisdom is so important. We will understand and be motivated to therefore live wisely throughout these short days that we have. I think that there are multiple ways, multiple steps that we can do that in life, and that's really what I wanted to this video to be about as we start this week, or as we start not only this week but as we start this year, is really thinking about how can I live wisely? How can I focus on being purposeful this year? Because I think that one of the ways that you live wisely is by being purposeful in what you do. And if there were one great encouragement that I would have for you this year, it would be that you would live purposeful in your life. In other words, don't just live, don't just let day after day after day tick off, but have purpose. Find and draw purpose in your life. And we'll get into ways that you can do that in a little bit. But again, it at the very least it starts by having a plan. Have a focus, have a purpose, have a plan, have a path that you would like to walk down in 2023. Give thought to these things. Now's a great time. We're kind of through the holiday season, and it's kind of like the doldrums start to come in, especially if you're on the East Coast or even in the Midwest. If you're in the midst of winter right now, a lot of people acknowledge that once you get through the holidays, from there to spring can just be a tough time, right? I would suggest that you take the time and start to think through, and if you are a believer, if you are a Christian, pray through what's on the table this year. What are the things that I would like to see in my life? Maybe there's some changes, maybe there's some things you want to accomplish. And let me be clear, I'm not talking about resolutions. I really hate resolutions. I think they're stupid. So I'm not talking about, I'm going to make a resolution to do this or that. But what I am talking about is taking a moment and jotting down a couple things that you would like to see, or that you would like to, if not see them in your life, you would like to achieve them in your life this year. Again, the idea is to get headed down a purposeful path. Once I've written down a couple of things, I would like to see this happen, or maybe I'd like to go here. Maybe I'd like to experience a change in this area. Once you write those things down, now you have a record, and you have a record that you can go back to and say, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot that when I was pondering this year back in January, I was really jazzed by the idea of this or seeing that. And it can get you back on track. It can also help you start to work out some of the steps of those things. So if you wanted to do something, if you wanted to achieve something, then you can start to scribble down a couple of things that you're going to need to see happen, or that you're going to need to do in order to see that happening in your life. And that, again, can become then a daily or weekly thing that you look at and you go, have I done anything? Have I taken any steps in this direction? What would that look like? How can I do that? And I think that ultimately it can bring you focus and purpose daily, frankly, that you can look and you can say, okay, I know that there's things that I need to do today, and so I'm going to check those off my list. But there's also things that I would like to do, that I want to do, because they push me closer to some of the purposeful ideas and things that I would like to achieve or see in my life. So take some time now as you begin the year, and then revisit that time, whether on a daily basis, a weekly basis, or a monthly basis, to look and to see. And maybe as you walk down the path, you realize, that isn't really something that I want to see to completion anymore. And I know that some of you, some of the spiritually high-minded folk, are probably watching this or listening to this, and you're thinking, well, what about God? What about God? And I think that's the great thing about this. I think that sometimes, and maybe far too often as Christians, we take this view of God and faith that says, I just kind of sit around and then, since God is sovereign and God is in control, he's just going to do whatever. And I just kind of sit here. And that's not at all what happened. That's not at all the approach that you ought to have. In fact, the first true step of gaining wisdom is found in God. It's found in acknowledging God. It's found in pursuing God. It's found in knowing God. It's found in following God. So really, the whole course of Scripture, when it looks at wisdom, it's 100% tied to God. So you can't be purposeful if you're not wise. You can't be wise if you're not following God. If you don't acknowledge him and pursue him and follow God, then you cannot be purposeful. You cannot be wise. And again, time just ticks away. So I'm not at all telling you to leave God out of your plans. In fact, I believe that 100% that purpose in life is found in God. It's found in a relationship with him. And I think that one of the best passages that kind of links this idea of man's planning versus God and his sovereignty is found in Psalm 16. Not Psalm 16, the book of Proverbs. The Old Testament book of Proverbs for chapter 16. I'm going to read the first 3 verses. Here's what it says. The plans of the heart belong to man, but the answers of the tongue is from the Lord. All the ways of a man are pure in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the spirit. Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established. I love that. I love that. Let me read that whole passage, if I can get it up here. I would like to read it from another translation. I want to read it through the NIV. So out of the New International Version, to humans belong the plans of the heart, but from the Lord comes the proper answer of the tongue. All a person's ways seem pure to him, but motives are weighed by the Lord. Therefore, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. And that's really what it's about. The idea of committing there, the actual Hebrew word is the verb for roll. As in, you're rolling a heavy load, you're rolling a heavy rock, you're taking something heavy and you are pushing it and rolling it and giving it over to God. It's something that takes humility. It's something that takes prayer. And ultimately, it's only God who can lift the load. So you're sitting here, you're saying in 23, I would love to see this happen. I would love to see that happen. But you're taking that and you're going to the Lord and saying, Lord, this is my heart. I would love to see these things happen. This is what I would like to do. This is what I'd like to pursue. Realizing that he gets to revise this at any moment if he wishes. But also realizing that he's the one who's going to provide you the strength, the direction, and everything you need for these things to come about. It's kind of summed up later in verse 9 of the same chapter, Proverbs 16:9. In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. In other words, none of these passages are saying don't plan, don't have a purpose. In fact, they're saying the exact opposite. They're saying plan, have a purpose, but make sure that you're doing so and giving that over to God, giving him the right to edit, revise, approve, disapprove, and understanding that ultimately it's him The Lord establishes their steps. It's Him that's going to bring these things to fruition. So, if you don't plan, if you don't focus, if you don't have a purpose, there's nothing for God to establish. There's nothing for Him to work with there. And so again, nowhere in Scripture are we told to just sit around and just, life is life and I'm just going to sit around and wait for the Lord and He'll make it clear. Well, actually, what Scripture says is that we give our plans over to Him and we allow Him to not only fulfill them, but should the need be, to edit them. So that's what I want to leave you with as we go forward this year. I want to encourage you to be purposeful. I want to encourage you to be focused. I want to encourage you not to simply let the days tick off because you realize life is short and life can be hard. And I love that when you go back to the original passage that I spoke of in Psalm 90, one of the great things that he concludes in that is that it's God's love that makes life worth living. It's God's love that makes life easier. It's God's love, because in His love we find all that we need. We find all that we are. And we find that He is able to do in and through us what we could not do on our own. So I hope for 2023 that you will be focused. Take some time, sit down, pray. If you don't have anything on your heart, ask God to put something on your heart. Pray, think about it, and determine, hey, I'm going to write down a couple of things, and I want to see God at work. I want to see purpose in my life, and I want to focus on this, and I want to see things accomplished in my life. Remember, as you do that, biblically speaking, you are giving God the right to adjust. So don't be surprised if He comes along and is like, nah, we're not going to do that now. Now it's not the time for that. Okay, we move on to something else. Or He may change your heart, where you start off going, wow, I really was passionate about this, but now that I've been exposed to something else, now that I've seen something, there's something else that I want to do. Again, that's where God establishes your way. But are you taking the time to focus, to plan, to be purposeful in what you're doing? I hope you are for 23, and I hope that you will start by purposing to SNL with this channel. Subscribe, notify, like, and then of course comment. Before you move on to the next video, take a minute to subscribe to this channel. Take a minute to hit the notification bell. Take a minute to like this video. Take a minute to drop a comment. I would deeply appreciate it. And I do look forward to an exciting 2023 for you and for myself as we see all that can transpire as God establishes our plans and our purposes and our way. So I leave you as I do each week. Do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with your Lord.